All right, here we go, boys. Five, four, three, two, and hey, everybody! Welcome to the Nerdy Bunch presents NSSN. Da-na-na, da-na-na. We are the Nerdy Sports podcast brought to you a bunch of sports nerds. Of course, I'm here, American Yang, Travis Rosenbluth, Koki with the fresh throwback hat. Koki, introduce yourself and say hello.
Hi, how you doing, guys? I got this Eagles corduroy on. It's very nice. It's very nice.
Yeah, that's toasty
Rare.
hot. And Tim.
Nice little fit.
Tim, how
What's
we
up,
doing?
guys? Another beautiful Monday. Hope all the moms out there enjoyed their weekend. And let's get back to action, talking basketball.
Getting back to basketball, and there's a lot to cover, guys. There's a lot to cover as we finish up the Last Dance, episode 7 and 8. The long-awaited finale, which I'm not going to lie to you, didn't really feel like a finale, but we can kind of wrap it all up in a bow at the end of this.
Oh no, Travis, we have two more episodes. Travis, you have 2 more episodes.
Why did Wikipedia tell me it was only an 8-part series? Then?
Wikipedia lies to you. It's a 10-part series, bro.
Oh, that makes
Should have read my article before this, man.
Yeah,
seriously. Well, you know what? Like the average internet purveyor, I use Wikipedia to tell me the truth and only but the truth. So help me, Wikipedia. But okay, well, there you go. We are off to a great start, obviously, knowing that there's actually a 10-part series. But anyway, let's go through these last 2 episodes. Then we kind of, I don't know, it felt a little bit of a filler, just kind of throwing in some entertainment aspects. But of course, we see. His father's big influence on him, and the number change, and the baseball. I mean, there's a lot to go in on. So, Tim, you want to identify something that we can kind of get a foothold into right away, because it's a lot to unpack and a lot to consume. So, where did you want to start after watching both these episodes, 7 and 8?
Yeah. So, coming out of the last podcast we had, my main question going into this was, why did Michael Jordan retire? What was the real reason, and what were they going to show us?
Yeah, it's so funny because on the front page it just said why, and I just thought of you and asking that question. Like, okay, here we go.
I was just like, let me know, man. Like, I'm 29. I'm trying to figure it out myself in this world, but I'm far from losing motivation. But I guess a little connection with this podcast. It's a passion project for us, and Michael Jordan was trying to find that motivation. He was trying to figure it out again. And I feel, it was crazy. In 1992, when they joined the Dream Team, he was interviewed with this episode saying that he was done at that point. And the only reason he wanted to come back was because Magic Johnson and Larry Bird never had a three-peat. So once again, of course, he just has to prove I'm better than everybody else. I got to get this three-peat, and then I'm good. Then I'm done with basketball.
Yeah.
And it just blew me away. I was like, all right, cool. So I guess that's really it. You just want to make sure that before you're done with this, you want to prove that you're absolutely the best and there's no question, no doubt. And, of course, maybe down the line, somebody will be better. But there was such a story behind this that I don't know if anybody's going to be able to break Michael Jordan being the greatest of all time in the eyes of people that defend that till they die. Koki, how do you feel about this in terms of why he retired or anything like that?
Well, it's funny. So I happened to watch Jordan Rides the Bus, which is the ESPN 30 for 30, like 2 days before I watched the episode. Not really on purpose, but sort of it happened, and I was like, oh, might as well watch it anyway. So I think in both documentaries, I think Jordan Rides the Bus was actually more of a filler, quite honestly, than I think that the episode was. I think what was interesting is that they just really went into the concept of his father dying, right? And as someone who's very close to I'm close to my father, and I could understand especially if his father was there for the first 3 championships, to win 3 NBA championships and a three-peat after a 9-year career, and then your father gets tragically murdered, not just passes away, or not just he gets murdered. That's a way to definitely
shocking too.
Yeah, it's very shocking, right? So I could understand him wanting just to be like, all right, these guys are hounding me in the media. I'm physically exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And
being accused that you caused or had some influence on your father's murder from the media would probably be, and before this episode, we were talking about the media's portrayal and agenda of him in the last episode. The cherry on top to be accused of your father's murder is just disgusting. I mean, outrageous and cynical, unreal.
Yeah. So that having that aspect of it really, be a real, and I think he opened up in the documentary about it where he talks about, hey, I needed a change, right? And his dad and him have been talking about baseball. He probably already sort of made the decision. And I think this episode, even the episode before, sort of reminded me of the episode earlier with Dennis Rodman, where Rodman's like, hey, I need a break. Right, I need to get out of here.
You need to get out of here and gotta go to Vegas.
Gotta go to Vegas, right? And I think for Mike, he's not the person to go to Vegas and while out in that regard. It doesn't make sense for him. He loses focus, right? And he doesn't like that. But to go and try to seriously tried and attempted to master another sport, that he had.
Which he also had a background in as well, right? The passion part of it.
Yeah, the passion. So, right. and also, quite honestly, and I think they didn't really hit on this either in the documentary of this one, and then Michael Rides the Bus. But when the owner of the team that you leave is also the owner of the team that you end up getting signed with,
helps
it doesn't hurt
a little bit.
It doesn't hurt.
And you paid your previous salary too on
exactly.
The team, which
so
can't hurt.
I think the owner Jerry, I don't remember his last name, but he played it right. Reinsdorf, yeah, it was Ryan something. I just couldn't remember. I don't want
to cut you off. But that's why I mentioned the 1992, the summer of '92 with the Dream Team. It's like he already wanted to go to baseball before his father passed away. So his father passing away, it was an emotional time, of course, because he was more than just his father. He was his best friend. He was his role model, inspiration, I'm sure, everything like that. But at the end of the day, he was burning out because of how hard he worked and how insane he was to prove to everybody that he was absolutely better than you. And it was just incredible to see that transition, because I followed LeBron James' career pretty deeply, as a basketball fan and someone that was, born in 1990. I'm not going to have that same perspective for Michael Jordan, but I've always been just blown away by LeBron's longevity and the fact that he could just pace himself but still insert dominance and come up with a big play when you needed it. And no matter the doubters, he still had adversity like Michael Jordan did. It's funny. I saw this clip of Colin Cowherd doubting LeBron when he was going into the Warriors series and they were down 3-1. He was like, well, all right, his career's over. There's no way he's going to make that big play again. And then all of a sudden, we know the history. He runs off three.
Well, hot takes like that gets you a primetime radio show on Fox Sports. So that's where you go and you can make those hottest of takes. To take a kind of a different path or to add on to your point, Tim, about longevity, is that the mind frame of Jordan when he first retired was, I've got my legacy. Legacy was built for me or achieved by me in a shorter amount of time than it sometimes take people to establish that across, a 12-year career or even more than that to establish legacy. Yes, Tom Brady's one of the best, maybe pure passers or all-around quarterbacks we've seen. But a lot of people are giving him a lot of more accolades because, look at how long he's been here, and whether those are correlated or not, all comes down to what's inside the athlete's head. But Jordan at that age was like, Game got 3. I'm passionate about this. That's the reason I don't need to be, I don't need to be the old guy that gets dragged off the court, and he mentioned it so much in I think last week's couple episodes. So he just has, I think that, and I like to hope that this thing in most superstars are the ones that really, define an era, is that you hope that they have that kind of next level understanding and they're not just kind of wayward with how they are going about their decision making. It seemed like Jordan, for all of his intensities and his alienations of the team, also had the yin yang effect with kind of his thoughtfulness. And you kind of do see that. I thought these episodes were really cool at kind of highlighting Jordan's own mental and then how that relates to his teammates going forward. I mean, I thought the insight with Steve Kerr and Toni Kukoč, Pippen not, taking that final, the final shot or sitting out of the final couple of minutes. And when he did that, the first thought I had was like, remember in the beginning, first two episodes when, Jordan was just told to pass to Fine Paxton, and Jordan's like, but he knew, like, okay, that's the play of the game. And those little things about Jordan, I think, is what makes him more honorable as a great, just because he has those, the fluctuation of thought and how he goes about it. I thought I gained a lot more of interest and kind of reverence of his talent because of that. I don't know if you guys want to float on that or not, but there's a takeaway from it.
100%, man. I feel there were two moments that really stood out to me in terms of what drew the emotion out of Michael Jordan throughout the first 8 episodes we have. The first moment was when he was reading the note he gave his mother when he was in college. And at least I know for me, I could definitely empathize with that, where you have absolutely nothing. You're really just like desperate for whatever your mother can give you. And, that drew him to emotion because, family, and that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing was at the end of this 7th episode was when he was talking about like defending his philosophy, just like you were saying, like why he talked to his teammates in such a demeaning manner. It was about winning 3 championships in a row. And that was it. But like he retired because there was no more challenges, no more motivation. And I feel, I want to bring up the summer of '92, like I said before, because I feel like this was probably a thought from high school. I know I read something when he was 15, he got cut by his high school basketball team. Everybody knows about that. But he thought sincerely about quitting basketball for good and just doing baseball. So going into this documentary, something in the back of my head is always was really what was his love? Was baseball always something that really was going to be a seed in the back of his head throughout his entire career? Something that gonna pull him away, or how is that going to impact? And I feel this was a great 2-part weekend where 7 and 8 really showcased what was his mentality, not just about how he talked to his teammates, but truly why he just had nothing left.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you saw that it wasn't the finale, because we do have 2 more. It definitely didn't cap off finale like. I'm really intrigued to see what's next. We all know they're going to play the Pacers, and Reggie Miller set up at the end of episode 8 like, okay, it's our time to take it. It's our time to show him, like, all right, we're going to put you into retirement. And of course they go to finals, play the Jazz, and hit the shot, and all of a sudden, boom, championships number 3.
Well, yeah, no, I think when it comes to, these last 2 episodes, we do get a little bit more of a curtain behind Mike and his process. I found it interesting when you were talking about the way he rides Scotty Burrell, right? For in the 98 season, 97, 98, where he's
who does sound like a pretty stand-up dude.
Scotty Burrell. He does, and again, I think when you see Mike both on the court and off the court, right? He's consistent, right? And I think that one thing that he says throughout the whole documentary from beginning to the end is that if you're in my circle, I care about what you think. Everything else is for the game. right? And in terms of like the way that his relationship with his father and why he retires the first time. I mean, again, like I said, to have someone, I don't think many father sons that I know of get to see their children succeed at a level and they can actually be a part of that success, right? There's father son combinations where you get to experience a bit of it, attend an award show or ceremony once, but to be able to go see your son work every day, and then also once he achieves those goals, then also be on stage with him, right? That's like that's producing a movie and then going to be at the Oscars with them, right? Like, and being on stage with them. That I think that changes the dynamic. I think then more than I really think that really any athlete we had seen at the time, right? I think the only other comparable athlete would have been like a Tiger Woods, where their father wasn't just, again, another proud parent. They were almost to a degree, part of the team, right? The way that Jordan's father was in every, I mean, when you see the pictures and you look at the locker, I didn't personally did not realize how much. And like Mike said, it was like a friend, right? And I think that that first retirement, I can't emphasize enough, I think, how much that impacted his motivations, right? Because I think there's a part of him that might have kept going for maybe another year or so, if his dad was still alive. But I mean, you take away that there, and especially with everything, all the other noise, right? I think his father is that last straw, like he was sort of saying, to like breaking the camel's back. Like, you can't really, you really can't. I don't think emphasize enough how much that changes the whole dynamic, right? And then to the point of his mentality, actually, I thought was really, really interesting was him defending his mentality for how he treated his teammates. Was like you said, he wants to win on the court. When he's on the court, he is going to go as hard as he needs to. And I think also being a child of the 80s basketball, but as hard as he needs to make these guys go that much harder and for it to be easier for these guys that much easier in the game.
We like that today, by the way. I mean, we like that, and yes, as fans in most cases, do you think we like that today? I mean, we like that in players of the past, I think, but when you think of team mental and putting up the goods, I mean, are there people not even comparable to Mike, right? Let's just talk about like the second rate people or whatever. I mean, do we like that today? The guy that's going to go in there and just badger an entire team with as much publicity as we give sports today. You don't really, some people, I don't think you even really hear of stories, or if they are, they're super rare, of like Draymond Green telling like Kevin Durant to like, called him a name and said, put up a shot. I mean, the boat rocking is so much more substantial now when it does come out, but I don't know if have we kind of moved on from that style of player mentality in a team sport?
Well,
and that's why we're so fascinated and kind of being like, oh, that's a unique thing, because now we don't really have a lot of people that are, outside of the fighting world, that type of cocky, in your face, mentality of a athlete in sports anymore.
Well, I think it's also part of the fact of the concept of even physicality, right? So Mike, literally to the point, will fight you, right? So he wants you to fight him. He wanted Steve Burrell, like you said. He said, "I wanted Steve to fight me." Stand up for yourself, Steve. Right? When Steve Kerr punches him in the chest, he's like, you know what? Steve earned my respect. I crossed the line, you're right. But yeah, Steve, you earned my respect because you didn't back down. I think that across the board, right, especially in sports, especially in team sports, unless you're, again, I think the only sport that really does it still is football, to a degree, because you can allow for people to actually get physical with you. And you see it when you watch when you watch preseason, the Hard Knocks, there's always a fight or two in camp, and no one has an issue with it. But realistically, I think especially in a sport like basketball, we've gone away from it because people don't like to see the physicality of it, right? To your point, there's too many cameras, there's too many moments in which all that is not just seen, but then also scrutinized, right? Sort of, especially in basketball. Like in basketball, Michael comes out of the 80s and into the 90s, realistically, right? There was a mentality of, oh no, you can hit someone, be physical, you can hand check them, you can do all these things. By the mid 2000s and then into the, for the 2010s, like that changed, right? David Stern got rid of a lot of the physicality out of basketball, both on the court, which then also definitely persists off the court.
Yeah, right? It has to have some type of bleed over into the mentality of the athlete. If you're being told, hey, it's becoming a, for lack of a better word, it's just becoming a softer sport, if you will.
Fully.
A more delicate one, maybe.
Well, I mean, again, I think this is the mentality again, like the only sport that sort of still exists is in football. And again, even there
too.
Hockey.
No, I think actually, my hockey people out there.
I think actually hockey exists a lot, the most probably. Actually, let me take that back off all, because again, hockey to the degree there's a certain understanding, right? These guys are here to get their teeth knocked out, right?
It's an accepted rule, man.
It's an accepted rule, right? And even though it sounds insane to anyone who doesn't play the sport, you know that, yeah, well, if I do it now in practice, we beat each other up. By the time we get to the game, who am I going to be scared of, right? Mike learned that, as we heard and saw in the series in the 80s against the Pistons. He's not going to forget that. He's not going to forget getting his ass whooped by Rodman, right? You know what I mean? Like, you can't forget that. And
I think you guys are missing one guy, though. What about Jimmy Butler? What about the way he treated his teammates in Philadelphia? The way he treated his teammates in Minnesota? He couldn't handle Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, as you guys have talked about many other times in previous pods. And he couldn't handle D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns because they are part of this new modern era of people that are given pretty much everything and are admired and bowed down to and dating celebrities. And, I think, I'm not sure, but I think D'Angelo Russell and Ben Simmons both dated Kendall Jenner, but I don't know. I could be wrong there. But I think
we'll get our sources on it.
yeah, get on that. But I think, Miami Heat's an organization that really, really wants that from their athletes. And he all of a sudden he's probably one of the most underrated players in the game because of that.
Jimmy definitely came to mind. I totally am on your side with that one. It's a good call out.
Sure.
Yeah.
But overall, yeah, I mean, we're talking maybe 2 or 3 guys. Patrick Beverley is another guy that comes to my mind that, just wants to get in there. And I think he would prefer to play like Gary Payton than in this new modern era. But that's the era he's in today. It's you got to deal with. You got to play your cards that are in your hand.
And for those who are going to be watching this later, we will be trying to get Koki back. Assumably, he will be jumping back into this phone call. But thus is podcasting in the new age. But actually, the mentality though is such an interesting part to talk about. The physicality of playing the sport is something that you can awe at, but that mentality of how much he understood, it almost felt like he was on a different mental than anybody. Like only a few people could understand even where he's coming from. Sure. Like some people couldn't even understand. Like you saw that they didn't want to say it. Like I don't think they wanted to outright say it, but some of them I felt you could have just taken their little clip from the interview and sort of, dude, it's just a game, and that just a game idea
would have killed him.
Would have, like that wasn't even comprehensible. And we go back to that purpose. Like Michael's purpose was to win. Like it was so center focused. And yes, he had the shoe deal and he had Space Jam, but even during Space Jam they had what they call that, like Mike's dome Mike or something like that.
They built it just for him. On set.
And invited people into it. Like it was just he was so determined, tunnel visioned.
Yeah.
Perfect word. And in both, and I try to look at today, right? And you try to see, you have LeBron. LeBron definitely can put up, without a doubt. His focus always seems to be, last week we talked about playoff LeBron, and that's absolutely true. There seems to be more business decisions every generation you get as these things become these leagues become multifaceted, and the cream of the crop get the bigger deals and whatnot. It seemed like Jordan was either just lucky enough to have that stuff coincide with his success, and he had people that were kind of, able to do that to make him successful, and he showed up. And that's putting it very, very broadly or vaguely or lightly. Whereas there seems to be more of a preconception of what LeBron's doing in his career, and you have other great athletes that have a preconception of what they're going to do in his career. Michael was just very much, I'm winning, and then whomever's ticking me off, whatever personal tick I need to add into my brain to stop that guy, I'm going to do. And people felt the wrath. I loved this part about the entire episodes, was that the wrath of shutting down particular players, shutting down Orlando, or shutting down was it Anderson on the Hornets? I'm forgetting his last name now.
Yeah, it was Nick Anderson was on the
right.
Orlando Magic. He was the guy that stripped him,
Yeah.
and he called him out. He's like, all right, well, number 23 could have beat us, but 45's got no chance. And then Mike's like, all right, fine. 45's I'm not feeling it. I'm going to put on 23. Like, who could do that? Like, Michael Jordan could do whatever he wants.
He could do that. Absolutely.
Yeah. He's a guy that gets the same contract when he's playing minor league baseball. So, it's like, all right, fine.
And by all the looks of it, too, it looked like Mike, if you were just to watch, if like I was a kid, if you grew up in the 90s, on the later end of his career, and all you saw was Space Jam, you would have thought that his baseball career was pathetic. Mike seemed to be on a trajectory to having a pretty reliable baseball career if he wanted to continue going on to the majors.
That's what I really appreciated from this doc. Yeah. Like I think about it sort of how I was saying before, like Mike wanted baseball from the beginning. And I think, was it the Boston Red Sox manager? He was like, if Mike just had 145 at bats, he would have made the majors.
Yeah.
And the AA couldn't even handle all of his fame. So they're like, you know what? We're going to push you into an even harder division,
right.
Just because like we can't handle the media outrage. We're getting more fans here than major league stadiums, I'm sure.
And,
at least in
his
Chicago.
determination, it took all but a minute and a half to get through what he was saying. But what he was saying about what he had to do to get into baseball readiness, understanding that, or not even, to understand what he did to get through baseball readiness, because, the next scene was him returning to basketball and saying, baseball, not as much shoulders and chest as basketball. It took me 15 months to turn my body around. It's so easy to one off and be like, yeah, he was okay. If he heard a little bit more here, he would have been a better baseball player. But the dude is spending an entire year to completely transform his body, to go through bare blistered hands to hit over 400 pitches, it seems like a day, and then go on, and even after the struggle of when he saw the changeup or the knuckle rather than the fastball down the plate, and then just the determination to go for it and be humble enough where, when they were interviewing who was soon going to be his manager in the lower leagues, the manager had such a way of saying it where you're like, he's like, I'm about to manage Michael Jordan. And he's kind of like saying, like, what do I have to say to Michael Jordan? But at the same time, Michael was like, all right, this isn't my field. I need to learn. I need to humble myself. Yeah. Just, if it's the story continues, and it's very impressive in what he's doing in his physical feat. But if you didn't walk away from 7 and 8 having a new, at least respect, or at least if you truly don't like success and don't like the Michael Jordans of history, at least you have to acknowledge wow, this guy had to put in a lot, regardless of what I think of him. he had to put in a lot to do even a minor level of success in whatever he wanted to do, especially when it pertains to baseball.
Yeah, right after you threw out the first pitch of that game, all of a sudden the media found the story and everything circled around it. It was almost like the OJ trials. Like everybody in the media needed to cover this story, and everybody's like, well, you may not like it, but this is what everybody wants to hear about. He was just the most famous athlete we've seen since Muhammad Ali. So that was that transition between taking, Chicago Bulls that were absolutely terrible before him, creating this franchise, three-peats, retires, does another three-peat. He created something out of nothing, whether it was the Chicago Bulls or Nike. And that's why we love him so much. We created this, aura around him. But I don't know, when he said, I'm back, in the beginning of episode 8, it's like, okay, that's all you need to say. It's simple as that. Like some articles don't require extra words. Just be simple about it. Like, all right, this is Michael Jordan. He's back. Like that's it. We get it. But just like you were saying, it's really impressive to put on, like, he only started lifting weights in like 89, if I'm like tracking his career right. And then all of a sudden he transitions his body to try to hit a curveball, which I can't even do myself. The
hand-eye,
we get
absolutely.
it, but that's it. It's like it humbled him. We're like, and the media needed to focus on that. It's like Michael Jordan's human. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, of course he's human, but we just wanted to tear him down in any way we could. And what I really admired about him, he didn't care about that. He's like, those are the people that are going to talk about me. They're not the people that I respect. If my mother's telling me this, it's one thing. But if like some guy from ESPN wants to, say I'm terrible at baseball and I am disrespecting the game, like that's on you. And it was really hurtful to see the way the media treated him when his father died. I'm sure that was absolutely terrible. And there was nothing better for him in his life than going to play baseball because of that locker room. And, everybody's just joking around and he could forget about it. I'm sure, there was media, but he was used to compartmentalizing everything. After the games with Chicago Bulls, he did his media and he took care of that, and then he was out. So I'm sure it's the same with baseball. You go in, you get your autograph signed. He's used to the fame. It exhausted him, but it was a separation from Scottie Pippen and that whole, Bulls regime. One thing that kind of stood out to me with this one was Jerry Krause again. He opens up number 7 and he's like, well, there's no collusion here. Don't worry about it. We're not what was it, backstabbing, I think his quote was. We're not backstabbing here, but yet you're gonna fire Phil Jackson even if he goes 82-0. It's like, yeah, okay, fine. You can say what you want. And then he gloats up Toni Kukoč. He's like, everybody in Europe is gonna admire him. Number 7 is everything, as we know with Cristiano Ronaldo. But it's like,
it's true. It's true.
Could
you imagine
kids.
Cristiano comes out?
You're all gonna want to be like Tony.
Yeah. Could you imagine Cristiano comes out and be like, yeah, the reason I'm 7 is because Toni Kukoč is 7.
Oh, man, that would be so good, right?
I mean, Tony's an interesting character because his whole persona, or the whole, like, because it kind of made him out to be kind of the subsidiary villain in one of the episodes, playing for Croatia, and then the spillover into the Bulls of him being on the team, and then this episode opens up with Krause singing his praises and whatnot. But by all accords, it looks like Tony was just trying to play basketball in America. Like the dude got thrown an unfortunate hand coming into it. But it just seems to me like he's just a guy who was like, I'm from Croatia. I can play ball. Yeah. Could you imagine, like, the next thing he comes from Croatia, and the next thing you know, he's getting has Scottie Pippen in his ear in the second season, and just
and this was a guy who
him.
Humiliated me in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And you become one of the greatest players in Croatia. Well, probably the greatest of all time. Like, I'm not really sure. I'm not well versed, but I'm sure he's one of the greatest of all time in Croatia. But
is Doncic from Croatia?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, right.
He was locked down by, Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. And then all of a sudden he's going to take a pay cut. And all of a sudden this guy, Jerry Krause, wants to take all the, credit for it. So of course he's like, here's this international talent I found. And I just want to make sure you guys remember this is about the organization here. This isn't about players. I'm sure he was elated in a way that Michael Jordan retired and the team was flowing and the ball was moving and Scottie Pippen was their greatest player, but he was passing it around like he was LeBron or something. That was really fun to see. Yeah. Koki, I see you're back here.
I'm back.
We were just talking about Toni Kukoč and how he probably got Cristiano Ronaldo to wear number 7. Of course, why not?
Honestly, I mean, I don't know. Toni Kukoč, I like his mentality, right? He's just like, hey, I'm coming in here to play basketball.
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly what you're saying. He's just a kid from Croatia who's like, I'm playing ball in America. But that comes with so much more, especially the way he entered the league.
Yeah, I think you saw from the 92, the 92 dream team, and you saw it again when he gets to the team. I think it's also tough because I think that part of it came back into Scottie's mind when he made that decision, right? Once it sit out. I think it's interesting because 100%. Scottie is, I think, fundamentally more emotional than Michael, right? Where, to your point, Trav, Mike's going to pass the ball to Bill Paxton if it means winning, right? And Scottie definitely wants to win, but he does have to. It has to be someone that he truly believes is better than him. And I think the whole thing with Kukoč is that he does not believe Kukoč is better than him. And like you said, if he did it 1,000 times, I don't think he would have changed it because I think that was also important for the growth of him as a person.
That kind of confused me. Like that, we all want to hear like, oh, if I could do it all again, I wouldn't do it.
No, he actually said he would.
He said he would do it.
He would do it again. He doesn't regret it one bit.
I know that blew my mind almost. It was like,
I don't think so. That makes sense for me because
to me it was petty. To me it was just petty.
Well, I don't think it was petty. I think he's one of those people that believes things happen for a reason, right? And I think that his maturity level, realistically, from everything that Scottie, across the board, right? I think Scottie's career is a really interesting career because I think he's naive at first, immature at times, but at the end of the day, he got to win and play with one of the greatest players of all time, right? And I think there are many faults in Scottie that aren't in Mike that affect, I think, Scottie overall, right? I think Scottie is more of a, like I said, emotional being, though he's more quieter. Mike is way more in you, but Mike is very consistent in that regard, right? So you can know when Mike is upset, when Mike is not. I think Scottie, because his natural inclination is to be quiet, everyone thinks that he's not necessarily strong. And I think for good or for bad, at times he attempts to be strong when the time doesn't necessarily call for it, right?
I'll tell you something on that too, is that if Scottie, and to correct me if I'm wrong throughout this last couple episodes, Mike, I think Mike can look eye to eye, or all right, let me say it this way. I think that people like Toni Kukoč, I think people like Steve Kerr, I think people like, let's just focus on those two because those played the most important 2 parts of this basketball episodes. Mike confronted them in the essence that Steve Kerr obviously punched him in the chest or whatever have you. And then, even though Mike was not on the team at the time, but Toni accepting that shot and saying that I'm the man and I'm going to drain this, I think, and this is complete speculation here, but just from what he, his outcome perspective on Steve Kerr after he got, went toe-to-toe to him, is that, when you can when you can answer the moment, whether it be Mike's getting in your face or your star player just decided that he's not going in and you got to now make that shot. I think that those moments show Jordan, okay, this guy answered the bell. I think that, and you're going to have to remind me if I'm wrong on this one, though, I haven't seen really a confrontation between Michael and Scotty, or Scotty versus some adversity, besides his injury and his less pay, where Mike could have been, looked at him and said, okay, Scotty deserves that, little respect in my eye now because he stared down adversity. I think that over the time, Scotty got it from Michael, but unless there's something that we haven't seen already, those moments of adversity, Scotty then sat on the bench in this regard versus playing for the team, taking the shot, or in Steve Kerr's case, throwing a punch, just those little moments of defiance, if you will.
Well, I think Scotty needs Mike, again, like I said, from a mental standpoint, right? I think realistically, Mike can't say anything to Scotty because Scotty has done everything that Mike's asked him to do, right? Like, even when the time that he's pissed off that Scotty's out, he's like, all right, well, Scotty's out. And I think that's the sort of the difference in sort of Mike and Scotty, because also, again, Mike will go out there and do that. Scotty, for all the talent that he has, I think is more of, hey, I'm going to go do me, quite honestly.
Like Scotty's more comfortable with being number 2. Like, that's his comfort zone. That's where he sells, and that's his fame. He's never wanted to be the guy that's going to be the first chair, if you will.
No, I think he wants to be the number 1 if Mike's not there, as in, hey, the moment is mine, or the moment where, I'm playing better, I'm playing, like he said very calmly, he's like, I thought I was better than Jordan. The reason he sat out.
That's why he was so pissed.
Yeah. He's like,
he wasn't going to get the ball. He's like, this is my time. What do you mean? Mike's not here. This is my team. You're not going to give this team to Toni Kukoč. I don't care how much Jerry Krause loves him. But I think pissed him off.
And I think it was also, again, it's that moment of where he thinks that Phil should have known, right? Where I think that for the good and bad of Phil, and I think, we've sort of seen this in teams where he's not with a Jordan or a Kobe, Phil sort of will let you do you, right? In every sense, Phil is never going to force or push his agenda on you. You're either on it or you're not on it, right? And I think that for the most part, people respond. But I think that sometimes especially in this regard, he looks at Scotty, he's like, all right, cool, you're not on it. We're running the play. Like, that's the only thing that matters. So I think
wasn't wrong.
No, I would never say. I didn't say it was wrong.
Phil was right.
And that's sort of that's the thing about Phil, right? And I think that also comes across where, where you see it with Rodman, you see it with Steve Burrell, and again, I thought it was really interesting this episode to old teammates is B.J. Johnson, and what it was interesting to see Mike's underlying motivations, right? Like, I think the thing with Scotty. At the end of the day, I think Scotty cares more about living his life day to day in a place of Zen.
Yeah, the purpose of it. Yeah,
and the purpose of it, and I think that realistically, Scotty's background and backing from a family standpoint is fundamentally different than Mike. I think Mike, because of someone like his father, accepts the leader role wholeheartedly and never wavers from that. He doesn't know how to do anything less, right? Mm-hmm. I think. And then when you see, so his motivations for dominating, I don't think Scotty ever wants to dominate. I think Scotty just wants to play basketball. Mike wants to dominate you. And these last 2 episodes were really examples of the little slights that either motivate him to dominate and raise his game better, which I don't think, even if they're true or not, right? Whether it's the second-year guy saying, hey, Mike, nice game after scoring 37, which he might have never did.
Yeah, Mike's a sicko, by the way. He's just a sicko.
But again, like, to your point of, like, the athlete, right? This is more of the mentality of one of my favorite football players is Deacon Jones. And his mentality for the sack was that he was going to take every quarterback in the league, put him in a burlap sack, and beat the living shit out of them. That's the foundation of the word sack, kids. That right there. And that mentality means I need to dominate you. I need to make you feel my pain, right? And I think that, again, Scotty, especially the way that he was brought up as a player, he always had Mike to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that it's similar to Dennis, right? Dennis just had to be Dennis, right? He didn't have to be anything else.
Scotty, like I was saying, Scotty absolutely wanted to be number one, but to win the championship, some players are just best fit as that number two guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jimmy Butler's a number one mental guy, mentally, but game wise, he's not there. Like he needs somebody else, which is why I'm a little concerned about Miami, but they're more of like a future project. Just seeing Bam Adebayo, like, oh man, they got it. But we'll save that for another day. We're really focused on the Bulls here.
Miami's playing with house money right now. Just enjoy the ride.
yeah, having fun for sure.
Yeah, really.
But there's just a lot of players in the game that are like that. Like, we always try to figure out Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, right? It's like mentally they're probably both number twos. Talent-wise, they're both number one. So that creates a terrible dynamic because they both think they're number one, but they're not acting that way, but they have the talent for it. So it creates, something great to talk about, but terrible for your organization in terms of winning, because then all of a sudden a Celtics team with a bunch of young kids could just come in and take it over because Brad Stevens just, is a better coach. They'll straight up just win. But Phil Jackson was able to showcase what he could do when Scottie Pippen was the guy, because all of a sudden he was getting a lot more credit. And I feel a lot of this documentary is a credit negotiation. It's like who's really getting it all, and some guys are okay with Michael Jordan getting all the credit, but I'm sure Phil wanted it, absolutely. Jerry Krause wanted it, Scottie Pippen definitely wanted a little bit of it, and that was his time to shine, and the team was flowing. And it definitely sucks that 1.8 seconds left in the game can change your entire outlook of your career in the public eye, because people are going to hark on that one moment. I hope that LeBron can showcase, 10,000 moments for people to forget about 2011 versus the Mavs. But at the end of the day, that's always going to be one of the first things people bring up. And with Michael Jordan, they talk about the shot and 1998 versus the Bulls, versus the Jazz. And then they talk about his minor league baseball career, because that was when we saw him crumble. But like we were saying before, he probably was going to be pretty good at baseball too. He figured it out. He started off with a 14-game hit streak or something. Like, that's incredible. You were in AAA right off the get just because you're famous, and you're able to hit 200. Like, that's really impressive.
Yeah, I think
it was great. It was great. Go ahead, Coach.
Well, I think it's interesting to see, again, like you said, it's a credit sort of documentary, and I think it's also a montage of different. It's a montage of, again, I think Michael's motivations, realistically, right? Like I said, I think it's really interesting when Mike has to deal with the old players. Horace Grant. He hates when Horace is celebrating, after they beat him in the series. That pisses him off. He hates.
Don't talk shit versus Michael Jordan.
Don't do that,
please.
Wake up! Don't wake up, Mike. And I think though, that's what people forget about Mike, is that that's his motivation, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of it,
a reason.
Yeah, a lot of it is. I think again, the difference between Mike and LeBron, right? LeBron is going to look like that, act like that, and do that anyway, because he's usually physically just bigger than everyone, right? And I think he learned the hard way, okay, you got to do a little bit more, you got to get a little bit more skill. Michael has to work very hard just to get to that one place, right?
And his game was at the rim, but he was a little man coming in a center-dominated league. When you look at the list of all the great players, it was like Hakeem, Shaq, down the line, just center after center after center.
Very magic.
And every team had a power forward right next to him, like blocking the paint. So he had to generate that mid-range. And it's just incredible to see the game today. Now you want to do everything. Even your centers are ball handling, shooting threes. Karl-Anthony Towns, please, like, you could be so good. Just please figure this out. Watch this documentary. Like, get a little mentality boost. I want to see all these players be great. Like, I hope everybody learns that from me. I don't want to be biased. We all are biased at the end of the day, but I just want to see the greatest out of you. And that's what sports can bring me. And that's the joy I'm going to get from it. So please, Karl-Anthony Towns, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, listen, watch, like,
just
take a note.
Great.
Just be great.
Just be great. That's actually a great message to leave off. We're a little overboard, so we're going to wrap it there, gentlemen. A few PSAs before we go. The Bundesliga is coming back on, slowly introducing some soccer. The Premier League is going to be starting back up again behind closed doors. For all you sicko need someone to bet on something, I hope you enjoy horse racing in the Korean League that's currently out at the moment. But as we go forward, maybe talk a little Premier League.
For sure.
Especially because this will be barring substantial collapse, this will be the first Premier League win for my Liverpool Reds over here. And how to kind of analyze that as a fan going forward in the COVID experience, where it's, not attended by fans and pretty much just strictly going to be enjoying it alone, not in bars, and how that might put an asterisk over what we have to expect in our own domestic seasons going forward. So a little bit more to talk about. Of course, we will be back here on next Monday to talk about the finale, not 8, but 10 episodes in this journey. So we will be back. And Koki, you do the honors this time. Tell the people.
Keep it nerdy.